In Shawnee County Public Library, I would like to welcome you tonight to Women and Money. My name's Terry Miller, and I'm the business librarian here. This is the 6th year that we've had Women and Money at the library. Actually, the program started in 2009. We have a partnership with Housing and Credit Counseling, who puts this whole program together, and every year they listen to your feedback, and they examine the program and the curriculum, and so every year it gets better and better. And so we are really honestly thrilled to see so many people here tonight. Thank you for coming. I just want to thank a couple of other people too, a few people, Housing and Credit Counseling, that have put this all together. Megan and Shayna, Elisa, and then we have a couple of volunteers here tonight, Qui and Karen. And Tani is volunteering tonight. She's also part of the program. She does some of the Q&A, and when we have breakout sessions, she has been a facilitator. She also participated in developing the curriculum. So we couldn't thank you guys enough. We just have a great relationship with HCCI. So let me see what else I'm supposed to address here tonight. Did everybody get some refreshments? And tea and water, and there's some fruit and cookies back there too. I put some books out in the back. We do have we have a good collection of books on money. And in the course of this course, I don't know the 8 weeks, you'll be learning about budgeting, credit reports, life planning, like wills and powers of attorney, those sorts of things. Try to pick out books every week that corresponds with what we're talking about. Also investments, and those are all back there, and you can check those out whenever you like. We'll probably take a little break later. We'll be around afterwards. You can take them up front and check them out. And I would encourage everybody to get a library card. That will enable you to check out the books, and you'll also be able to get on the databases that are going to be part of your curriculum. I've been asked for you to turn to page 11. I don't have my book. Does anybody have a book? I think it's page 11. Sorry, I forgot my book. I mean, there's plenty of them at the back, but. Okay. Thanks, Megan. So page 11, credit reports matter. Tonight you're going to learn how to read a credit report. So if you're interested in pulling your credit report, there are some websites listed down here, some free ones here, where you can do that. And you can actually come to the library and log on and get that too. We can help you with that if you don't have Wi-Fi at home, or if you need help accessing anything. You can always come to the library and ask one of our librarians at the service desk, and we'll help you get on a computer and look those up. So, another thing too, I think you should give yourselves credit for being here, because you did make a conscious decision to be here and to come and learn to work with other people. Learn from what we like about Women and Money is we learn from each other. There's always a Q&A. Don't be afraid to speak up and ask questions during the presentations, or if you don't understand something, be sure and ask, because that's what you're here for. You've made a decision to come here, and we realize it's a commitment to take the time out of your busy lives and come here. So we'd just like to thank you again for coming. I'm going to introduce you to Elisa Moore. She is the Education Coordinator at Housing and Credit Counseling Incorporated. And thank you.
Thank you, Terry. As Terry mentioned. My name is Elisa Moore. I'm a certified housing credit counselor in addition to being the education coordinator. I want to welcome all of you here. From what I understand, we had 103 enrolled by this afternoon, so very impressed. I'll reiterate Terry's comments about seeing so many people here who are concerned about their financial well-being, and hopefully through this series you'll find that you become more empowered to take care of those things as they arise in your life. I want you to understand that these are just not one-night classes, that you're going to take away a lot away from each of these classes. So it's not just the knowledge that is being shared with you, but we're also going to be telling you about resources. Each night we're going to have different things on the back table, pamphlets, additional information, okay? If you ever have questions about Women in Money, feel free to call HCCI as well. We'd be happy to answer those questions for you. To ensure we're meeting all of your needs, we're going to be asking you to fill out 2 different sheets at the end. The first one is a yellow sheet, and this is the pre-quiz, okay? You don't have to do it right now, but just as long as it's done at the end. And then we also have our evaluation for our speaker, and that's on the purple sheet. So if you could please fill out both of those sheets and leave them in the back. There will be a basket for them, and that way we have that information. The reason why we ask for those is because you're going to be providing us valuable feedback. Every year we have a planning committee that we're very fortunate to have year after year, and it does change. But we take that feedback and they try to improve on the series every year. I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is the 7th annual Women in Money series. So we're very proud of that, and we're very proud of everybody that puts time in to help us to make this a successful series. Okay. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors. So if you want to turn to page 6 and 7, you'll see everybody that has allowed us the opportunity to bring this to you this year. One of our biggest sponsors is actually in the audience here tonight. I'm going to ask her to come up here and say a few things. She is the Director of Investor Education, and she is from the Office of the Kansas Securities Commissioner. They have been our lead sponsor since 2010, so we're very happy for that. Shannon, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Hello, everybody. So good to be here again this year, our 5th year supporting the Women in Money series. It's been said that at some point, 90% of women will be the primary decision makers in their home. And that happens oftentimes through some destruction. Maybe it's death, divorce, or disease. And one of the wonderful things that we love about the Women in Money series and HCCI is that HCCI has had the vision, the forethought to prepare women against that day when they will almost inevitably have to make some financial decisions. I think a lot of times that we as women have such a focus on the now that we are not thinking about what may happen in the future. And so we are left standing after a calamity with no plan. We really appreciate HCCI's vision to equip women to not only survive but to also thrive. And they do that by giving you a plan. And so I also applaud each one of you for being here tonight to prepare for your future, as you are likely to be one of those who will at some point, if you are not already, making the decisions for the finances in your home. So with that, I will take my seat and I will let you go ahead. Thank you so much again for being here, and I look forward to visiting with you again in a few weeks about investor education. Thanks.
Thank you, Shannon, so much. She will be back on October 29th. We will have what's called Money Talk on that evening. It'll be from 6 o'clock until 6:50. It will be held right before Women in Money. It is free as well. We encourage you to come to that. The reason why we started Money Talk is because we found that there were other topics that you all were very interested in learning more about. Unfortunately, we are already at 8 weeks in this series. So, we don't want to overload people with too much information, so that's why we found these extra topics and created this smaller series within it. And you'll be able to see in your handbook exactly what is going to be going on with Money Talk this year. The first one is actually going to be on starting your own business. It's going to be on October 7th. You'll learn about startup loans, grants, how to analyze your risk when you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Now I'd like to bring up Megan Stanek. She is one of the people that helps put on Women in Money, getting it ready, doing the marketing, and she actually is one of the faces of Women in Money this year. You might have seen her on a billboard or on some of the information that's gone out, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the things that are around your neck right now.
Hello. When you came in, you were given these polling devices. Thanks to KSC, we are able to use these for the second year. They are a lot of fun. They allow us to answer questions anonymously throughout the PowerPoint. Some of the questions will be similar to those that are on the yellow pre-quiz, but we do ask that you fill out both of them, just in case somebody doesn't have one of these or it doesn't work. That way we can use the information to make the classes better for you guys this year and future classes. If you have any questions while you're using them, I will be in the back of the room. Just raise your hand. I'll come up and try and assist you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Megan, for enlightening us with that. Before I hand this over to Shana, who is going to be talking to you all about credit tonight, I just want to tell you one more time how happy I am to see all of your faces here this evening. It is wonderful. Credit is an interesting animal, so the more information you can have up front about it, the better off you're going to be later on. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Shana Deckett. She is actually from our Manhattan office. She is not only a certified housing and credit counselor, she is also the branch manager of that office and handles 3 or 4 or 5 or 100 different tasks every day in order to keep that place going. So, Shana, please feel free to take it away.
I should be on. Am I on? Can you hear me? Perhaps? Fabulous. All right, so I'm probably going to get out from behind there because that'll drive me crazy. Tonight we're going to talk about credit reports. And as Megan said, we have some polling devices to play with now. So we're going to do some questions. And I think a lot of these questions are probably on the yellow sheet that you guys have as well. But this is so that we can kind of see where everyone in the room is at. So if you guys could answer these questions, when we have a significant number of responses, we'll go ahead and see what the data looks like there. They are in the back. Yes, if you could take a minute to answer that. And it looks like we're getting up there. So we'll see. How old is everyone? So then we get to kind of see what the room demographics look like. So we've got a little bit of everybody in here. What is your household size? Well, it said household size. I would consider that part of the household. But then you get to count her in the income side, which is the next question. How many wage earners are in your household? You guys are getting stuck on technicalities. I would go ahead and include them in the household if they are, a permanent member of the household. All right, very good. Estimate your total household income with all of the wage earners. Very good. Might need some more investment information, huh? What is your personal salary range? Of course. Again, a little bit of everywhere. What's your shoe size? Right. There'll be some match dating afterwards, to get a little bit of all your information. All right. When I spend money on myself, I treat myself to what? All of them? It's a secret? I don't think that they can do multiple choice, can they? This is a select your top pick kind of situation. Clothes. Looks like the popular choice. All right. Very good. And how did you hear about Women in Money? You all saw Megan's fantastic billboard? Very good. Who in here has looked at their credit report in the last 12 months? All right. Very good. Do you know what is on your credit report? Very good. Hopefully I live up to all those who said yes, and I'm not giving you completely inaccurate information tonight. So you got to kind of see the results on there. Those will be handed out next week, so you'll actually have a copy of what those are. So we will get started about credit reports, and what we're going to talk about tonight is your credit report and scores and what they mean. We're going to talk about how to build credit, how to improve your credit score, and we will touch a little bit on identity theft as well. So this is just some statistical information about credit scores, kind of a little bit of everything. We've got a box that has what the average FICO scores are. On average, consumers today have 13 trade lines, so different types of debts, whether that be student loan, mortgage, car. On average, 9 of 13 are credit card debts. So a lot of credit cards out there. Credit cards are one of the biggest debts in the United States, topped only by student loan debt. So it's huge. It's a problem. And oftentimes, credit cards cause a lot of problems there. Yes?
Does credit card debt top mortgages?
Credit card debt is the second leading debt in the U.S., yeah. So we're going to kind of get into what is on your credit report, all of that lovely information. Ask you guys some more questions here. So your credit quiz. Paying cash for everything can help my credit history. True or false? False. Very good. So paying cash for everything, though it can be a good budgeting tactic, it doesn't actually help build a credit because there's no history of that. There's no way to prove your payments. Credit scores are calculated based on information in your credit report. Scores in the mid-700s are considered good. True or false? Very good. Smart crowd tonight. So yes, credit scores are calculated based on information, good, bad, and ugly. Scores in the mid-700s are considered good. Above a 720, 730 is going to be considered excellent. You should close any credit card account you haven't used in 6 months to help raise your credit. Very good. So that can be a little bit sticky. It kind of depends on the situation, the type of card, the limit on the card. All of that information needs to be taken into account before you decide whether you want to close an account or not. Credit is built over a long period of time, and one late payment won't hurt you. True or false? Very false. One late payment certainly is going to hurt you, and the more recent that late payment is, the more that's going to hurt your credit score. Negative and positive information remain on your credit report for the same amount of time. True or false? It is kind of a trick question. So most information is going to stay on our credit report for 7 years. Okay. There are a few exceptions to that rule, like bankruptcies, for example, are going to be on your credit report for 10. But most information, positive or negative, will remain on your report for 7 years. All right. So why is having a good credit report important? Why does your credit score matter? So this is a topic that I see often. People don't understand why it matters. If I'm meeting my bills and doing the things I'm supposed to do, why does it matter? Unfortunately, your credit score is looked at more and more. Even in the past several years, I've seen it matter significantly more than in the past. So your credit score can really affect anything where someone is looking at your credit and checking that. Even new hires, your new employer can ask to pull your credit report. And basically they're looking for information on, is this person reliable? Are they trustworthy? Those kinds of things are things that they want to see. Other things that it can affect that a lot of people don't realize is your car insurance. So those premiums are affected by whether or not you have a good credit history. That's going to give you a better premium, lower premium, that type of thing. So it really does affect a lot of things in addition to, of course, you're going to get better interest rates with a good credit score. You're going to be able to get a loan if you have a better credit score, those types of things. Yes?
My daughter has no credit because she doesn't do anything other than cash. Mm-hmm. I have okay credit, but I have frozen my credit, and I noticed that after I froze all my credit, because I had a problem with little Chinese people stealing my money out of my bank account, but that's another thing. I noticed that after I froze my credit reports or whatever, that my car insurance went down.
Mm-hmm.
So that appears to have the same effect as raising your credit score.
Yeah. Well, we're going to probably touch on freezing a little bit here in a little bit. So with some of the questions, we might be better off to kind of put them on a note card and wait, because there are a lot of topics, especially just getting into it, that we're going to touch on here in a minute, and that is one of them, okay? So we will get to freezing, but yes, oftentimes having no credit can be as bad or worse than having bad credit. So this is just a table of an example of the cost of credit. So this example is on a car loan for $18,000, and it's for two separate clients. The first one has a credit score of 695, and the second one has a credit score of 600. And based solely on their credit score, they were given different interest rates. Borrower 2 has a significantly higher interest rate, almost double, which, as you can see, makes their monthly payment almost $100 more per month, makes their total paid over $3,000 more on that car. Same car, same loan. Only difference here is their credit score. So as you can see, working to better your credit is going to pay off in the long run. You're going to have better rates, $3,000 less on that car, probably less on your car insurance. So all around, it's a positive thing to have good credit.
And neither of those are really what you call good credit, which is 700, maybe 700. So if you had like 700 up there, it'd probably be
Yeah.
750.
Right. The better you have, most likely the better your rates are going to be. Correct. So how do you get your credit report? I'm sure you've all heard the jingle on TV and on the radio. This website, annualcreditreport.com, is actually the only free website to truly get it free without signing up for something that you have to remember to cancel. From annualcreditreport.com, you have the right to get a copy of your credit report from each credit bureau one time per year. So you could actually get 3 different ones. Some people choose to pull them all at the same time and look at them all at the same time. Other people might choose to pull one and wait 4 months, pull the next one, etc. You also have the right to get a copy of your credit report if you've been denied credit. So if you applied for a credit card, car loan, etc., you would ask what credit bureau they used, and you would have the right to get a copy. Or if you are unemployed and currently seeking employment, you also have the right at that point to request a credit report. Those 2 times at the bottom, typically you will get your credit score as well. With the free credit report, your credit score is not on there. If you wanted, you would have to purchase that. Usually that runs around the $8 mark, so kind of depends on each credit bureau. So what is on my credit report? Of course, there's going to be identifying information about us. So our name is going to be on the report. Any names that you have gone by in the past, sometimes misspellings of your name that have been on an application will be there. Any trade lines that you have, so any open accounts that you have, mortgage, car loan, etc., student loan debt, credit cards. Delinquent accounts are on your credit report. So any collection agencies are going to be there. I've often heard people ask, well, I pay my electric bill on time every month. Does that help my credit? No, because your electric bill doesn't end up on your credit report unless you don't pay it and it goes to collections. So the only time you would see, Westar Energy on a credit report is if it's gone to collections and it's a collectible at that point, a negative account. Public records are also on our credit report. So if you have a judgment, a bankruptcy, those kinds of things are considered public record, and those will be listed as well. And then since we are at the library, we have our lovely little library trivia. Even library fines can end up on your credit report if they go to collections. So make sure to take care of those things. Yes. Inquiries are who has checked your credit in the past several years. So those are going to make a difference as well, how many times you've had somebody checking your credit. So what do you do if information is incorrect? So if there's something that's incorrect, you can fill out a dispute form. That can be done online. It can also be done via a letter. We always encourage, if you're going to mail a letter, that you do send that certified so you have documentation that it was received. And the information, if the information is verified as incorrect, it will be removed within 30 days of the dispute. Due to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you do have the right to have correct information. That's why that has to be done within 30 days. when you've disputed something, they will then do an investigation to verify accuracy on that information. So if you dispute, you're going to tell the credit reporting agency in writing and provide any documentation that you have. So if there's a situation where you have a collection account, but you know you paid that, and you can provide proof that it was paid, of course you want to send any documenting, copies. Send copies of any documents that you have. You don't want to send the originals there, but sending anything with them, notifying the creditors of the dispute as well as the credit bureaus always helps as well. So if anything is incorrect, it could be incorrect with all three agencies. Your best bet is going to be to go ahead and dispute with all three agencies. So a little bit more paperwork, but that all can be done online if you have access to the internet, and that's a pretty quick process. Or you can simply write a letter and dispute all of that. HCCI also does assist clients with this if that's a problem, and you don't know what to say or don't have access to the internet, etc. We can help with that. So when do I dispute what? Again, that comes back to how long information is on your credit report. So if you have judgments listed that are older than 7 years, they can be disputed at that point. Even though they are correct, they should only be there for 7 years. Bankruptcies, again, up to 10. But that's often a time to dispute something as well. Even though it is accurate, it's outdated information. When sending a dispute letter, be specific. List each account, the reasons for the dispute, including copies like we talked about. Sending it certified mail. Those things make a difference. You'd be surprised how many times it's not received. And then we're sending out the exact same thing again. I believe you guys should have a sample dispute letter in your book. So if you pull your credit report tonight when you get home or tomorrow and you find stuff on there, you can use that sample to help you respond to that incorrect information. Once you send a dispute letter, the credit bureau should send you back verification that they got your dispute and that they have opened the investigation. The letter will state that the creditor in question has 30 days to respond and verify the accuracy of that information. If that does not happen, if they do not respond within that 30-day window, the information will be removed from your credit report. However, if down the line, a month, 6 months, etc., they do respond and verify that that was an accurate debt, it will go back on your report until that 7-year window is over. So,
7 years from it originally being placed on there, or after they put it back, after they deliberately...
How long is that 7 years and when does it start, was the question. So that is kind of the activity date or status date on the account. If you make a payment on an account, that starts the 7 years again. So that status date is often from the last activity on the debt.
And that could be their activity.
It's supposed to be your activity. So if you paid it or you were sometimes even just verifying the debt and accepting responsibility that was your debt can be considered activity on the account. So credit repair companies, I'm sure you've all heard about credit repair companies, especially if you're late night television watchers, because it's all over late night television. So these we like to just caution people against. Beware of them because they are, most of the time, for-profit agencies, and often they're not doing anything that you can't do on your own, and that is, that can accurately be removed from your credit report. So they might be able to get something removed short term, but as I mentioned earlier, if it is accurate debt, it's going to go back on your account. So accurate negative information will remain on your report for 7 years, like we mentioned, and you can dispute it on your own. There's no need to pay somebody hundreds of dollars to dispute this stuff when you can do it by yourself. So, credit scores. Credit scores are a number ranging from 300 to 850, depending on where you're at in that mark. So your credit score can be purchased, as I mentioned, with your free credit report on annualcreditreport.com that doesn't actually have your credit score, and I believe that it's $8 on there. Here we're showing that it can be anywhere from $9 to $15, so it just kind of depends on which credit bureau you're purchasing that from. There are different scoring models. All of the credit bureaus that we talked about use the FICO score, and from my experience, the FICO score is the most common used in the Midwest. I think they might use a different scoring model elsewhere, but here that's kind of what we're looking at using. And that may differ among the credit bureaus. Unfortunately, credit scores can be a little bit hard to understand because they do change so often, and your Experian credit score might be slightly different than your TransUnion credit score. Popular slide. A lot of times this is where it starts to get tricky. What makes up my credit score? How much does this affect my credit? How much does that affect my credit? So this is kind of the breakdown of what's the most important. Payment history and amounts owed are the top players in this. So payment history being 35%, that's where we're going to see how many times are you paying late. They're going to be showing 30 plus days overdue, 60 plus days overdue, 90 plus days overdue. And then there's also derogatory accounts and how often we have those reporting. And those are going to be more like collection accounts. But that's something to look at. One thing I'll throw in here is I've often seen clients who were late paying their credit card, for example, missed the due date, and they were like, well, I've already been charged the $25 late fee. I'll just pay them and catch it up next month. Actually a mistake, because it's not being reported to the credit bureau unless you're 30 plus days past due. So as long as you do go ahead and make that payment while you're still paying the $25 fee, it's not actually going on your credit report. So make sure to pay those on time. That's going to be a huge player. The other thing with payment history that I have learned in the past is that that's a weighted percentage as well. And the most recent 4 years is the most important in your credit score. So getting further away from that is going to actually help your credit score. The most recent 12 months is weighted the heaviest of that 35%, then 12 to 24, 24 to 36, 36 to 48. So make sure that we're paying those on time is the most important thing. 10%, we're hopping around a little bit, but 10% of your score is new credit and types of credit. So again, the inquiries question, this comes up is like, how many inquiries do you have? How much new credit do you have versus a long, lengthy credit history? And what types of credit? They want to see that you have a mix of different types of credit. Maybe you have a student loan or a car loan, which would be considered an installment debt. You have a credit card like Discover, which is like a major credit card, versus having a smaller department store card. Those are different types of credit. So they want to see kind of a mix and that you're a responsible user of all different types of credit. 30% is the amount owed. As I mentioned, they're going to be looking at how much you owe in relation to what your credit limit is. So that's a big part as well. On average, we'll recommend that you keep your credit under 30% of your limit. So if you have a $1,000 credit limit, you're keeping your balance under $300 at all times. That can help increase your credit score as well. And then 15% is the length of credit history. So that's where, sometimes people who have no credit, they haven't started that credit history. So even if they're 35 years old, but they haven't had any credit, they just open a JCPenney card, for example, it's going to take a while to establish that credit and show responsible use. This is another table for us showing the cost of credit. This is an annual percentage rate, so it kind of shows if you had a credit card with a $2,000 balance and you only paid the minimum payment, how much are you going to be paying versus if you pay a little bit more? So with an 18%, or let's just call that 19% interest, if you make the minimum payment only, how long is it going to take you to pay it off? 264 months. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think, what is that, 20 years? I don't even know, something like that. And you'd be paying $4,786 on a $2,000 debt. So they're making good profit on that. If you pay $100, so you're only paying $60 more a month, it's only going to take you 2 years to pay it off. And you're only going to be paying this much in interest, $424 in interest. I mean, that, it just goes to show you that making that minimum payment, and for those of you who have credit cards in here, you should have a table like this on your statement every month so you can see how long would it take me to pay this credit card off if I made minimum payments only. Huge encouragers to pay a little bit more. Pay as much as you can on that credit card each month. Get that paid down. So, credit card companies and lenders use the following to determine whether or not to extend credit to an individual. So when you go in and you're looking for a loan, they're going to take a lot of information from you that's not just going to be solely based on your credit score. Though that is a huge factor in whether or not you would get a loan, the lender is also looking for, does this person have a stable income? What is their debt to income ratio? So do they already have a lot of debt, so they're really not going to be able to afford this debt? A stable employment history, again, just knowing that you're going to be able to afford to pay for a loan, especially if it's a longer term loan. You take out a 5-year loan, but you don't have a stable employment history, what are the odds that that's going to actually be paid? So really, again, it's just a risk assessment of where you're currently at. So how do you establish credit? One thing we recommend is to start using your debit card. That's how we would recommend using a credit card. So not spending anything that you don't have to spend, right? Once you are comfortable using a debit card responsibly, you're not overspending, etc. We've worked the budget and we're balancing. Then we can look at potentially getting a secured card if your credit won't allow you to get a different type of card. A secured card is actually not a prepaid card. They're two separate things. A secured card, you're actually going to be putting a security deposit down on that, almost like you would for renting an apartment. You're going to put a security deposit down. When you charge on that card, you're still going to get a bill, just like any other credit card, and you're going to have to pay for it. That security deposit's just sitting over there as security. So then paying that every single month is going to help build credit, and people will often use a secured card for a year or 2 years to build that credit history, then get a better credit score and apply for another card. When you close a secured card in good standing, you'll get your security deposit back at that point. Okay? Another way to build credit, or a good way for a parent to help their 18-year-old child, 19, 20, etc., build credit, is to add them as an authorized user on your card. That's going to help if you have credit that's in good standing. That's going to help them have credit. Now, one caveat to that is you don't have to tell them that you're doing it. And you don't have to actually give them the card. So you can do this without taking on a bunch of risk to yourself. So there are ways of doing that to help build them a little bit of credit without having to take on so much risk. Getting a department store card, like I mentioned, JCPenney's, all the stores in the mall generally have different types of credit cards. Be careful with those. I mean, you don't want to have 13 different cards, but those are generally easier to get than a major bank card. Asking service providers if they share payment histories. Some of those places will. I've seen more landlords on credit reports, where they'll actually report it as the entire year as a debt, and then you're paying it every month. So some of the larger landlords are starting to do that as well. And as I mentioned earlier, having no credit can sometimes be as bad or worse than having bad credit. So the 3 C's to credit are capacity. So again, as we kind of touched on earlier, your current and future ability to make the payment is what they're looking at. Your capital, so that's going to be, do you have collateral, for example, to put up against that? Do you have an asset that you could list? Do you have something else that you could put up if necessary? And then character, that's where your credit score comes in, and your history of paying bills and debts. So the Credit Card Act is another law that protects us. Key points for that are you have to be 21 or have a cosigner in order to have a credit card. The company must notify you 45 days in advance of any changes. So if they're changing the interest rate or they're changing the way they're calculating your interest charges, etc., you have to be notified of that. Payments are due 21 days after the bill is mailed. That's why you get your credit card bill so much earlier than all your other bills, and you're like, oh, it's not due until this date. Don't put it away and not pay it. Could be a tactic for making us late on this payments. But that's why it's supposed to be a protection to ensure that you've received your bill. You have the right to opt in for over-limit fees. You do actually have to agree to that to be charged that. If you don't opt in, of course, you're not going to be able to charge over your credit limit. That can actually be a good thing. So then they're not charging you over-limit fees, and you're not allowing yourself to charge over that credit limit anyways. And then they're not allowed to increase your rate during the first 12 months of opening the credit card. So no major changes on that is allowed. So can a credit card be considered a loan? Sometimes. It is basically a line of credit that you're opening for use. Ideally, it would be something that, you're not using your credit limit fully every month. Like we talked about, we're going to want to stay under 30% of that limit. So obviously, it's not something that we want to use all the time, but it is there if we need household expenses, family, personal. Those kinds of things can sometimes be considered a loan if we're going to go ahead and make these purchases. Monthly payments on a credit card are usually calculated at about 2 to 3%. So that's where that minimum payment is calculated, and that's why that goes up if you have a significantly higher balance. Points to remember. Always pay your card on time, and if possible, more than what's the minimum due, and as much as possible, right? As we learned tonight, that payment history is the most important thing in calculating your credit. So you're going to want to make sure that we always pay that on time every month, at least the minimums. Don't close accounts and transfer balances. I know a lot of times people will get into a sticky situation with their credit cards and then they'll do a balance transfer to a 0% interest card. That can mess up your credit history because it's the length of time that you've had that credit card opened, the length of time you've had numerous credit cards opened. Be careful, watch for changes in the terms of your account and avoid unnecessary fees. Again, depending on your particular situation, sometimes if you have a credit card that changes the fees on you and you suddenly get a letter that says we're going to be charging you $45 annual fee, that might be time to reconsider, is this card really worth keeping? Okay, so being aware of what's going on. Applying for several accounts in a short period of time. We have what's called the 14-day rule is a pretty common rule. Not applying for multiple accounts in any 14-day window. Applying for more accounts can signal, it can kind of be a red flag. Generally, if you're applying for more than one credit card in that short period of time, it's because there's oftentimes some crisis that's going on. And anytime there's a crisis that's going on, you're at higher risk of defaulting on that loan or credit card, etc. So check your credit report for accuracy. It's up to you to make sure that that's right. Nobody else is watching that to make sure it's okay. And oftentimes we'll have people come into our office that have identity theft, or they have a whole bunch of inaccurate information going on, and they didn't know about it until they went to apply for a loan. And at that point, repairing your credit or correcting it can take some time. It's not a quick process, so it's definitely something you want to look into before you need to get something done. And then if you do happen to miss payments, bring them current as soon as you possibly can, and then stay current. As I mentioned earlier, the more recent those late payments are on your credit report, the more they're going to affect you. Pre-approval offers. Does everybody get pre-approval offers in the mail all the time? Irritating. A little too much trash, right? Yeah. So there is a way of opting out of that. I'm sure you've probably all heard of the do not call list, for example. This is kind of a similar way you can opt out of getting all of those pre-approvals. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't apply. You can certainly apply for whatever you want, but you're going to stop getting all the pre-approvals in the mail. Which actually, jumping ahead of myself a little bit, can help protect you against identity theft as well, because there can be problems with all of these applications if you're just throwing them away and not shredding them. So you can opt out either via 1-800 number or via the website. So go on, check that out, reduce your trash, kill fewer trees, all that other good stuff. We're not going to get into a lot of student debt, but I don't know why that's happening. I'm not sure what I'm close to, but anyways. Sorry about that. You're all awake, right? Yeah? Good. Okay. Just checking. Anyways, so we're not going to go into student loan debt, but HCCI does offer student loan debt counseling. If you have student loan debt, there are a lot of options for repayment. And sometimes the student loan departments are not so free with what all those options are, and they're going to put you on a 10-year plan if you don't ever ask anything about it. So look into that if you have student loans. If you need help, we're here to help on that. I do not believe that that's one of the topics of the 8 evenings, but we're there if you need ya. Other repayment options. So if you have debt on your credit report, oftentimes that's when people find out about collections that they didn't know about, those types of things. So find out what you owe, who you owe it to, and then start looking into how to repay that. If it's a collection account, you can set up payment arrangements. You can offer to do a settlement. If you have the ability to pay that in one lump sum, they might accept less than that amount is actually for. But even setting up a payment plan is going to improve your credit. Having collection accounts on your credit report is bad. Having collection accounts on your credit report with a balance is worse. So it's better to have those with 0 balances than have them outstanding with balances. So identity theft, we do touch on that a little bit. Federal Trade Commission has a lot of information if you all are curious. The website's listed here, and I know we have some pamphlets and brochures in the back on identity theft if you wanted to grab one of those. So preventing credit damage with identity theft can be difficult. Anyone with a Social Security number can become a victim of identity theft. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have credit cards or anything open. If you have a Social Security number, they can do that stuff themselves, even if they're under 18. So be careful. If you have children, I would still encourage you to use the annual credit report and check their credit reports, because they could have something outstanding. It's just a good way to watch for that identity theft. Yes?
So I thought this was a crazy question until you said that part. Adding them as an authorized user, at what age, if you don't choose not to tell them, and you're just doing it to set them up for when they're ready to leave, at what age is it appropriate to do that?
If you're just using that to build credit, I would probably wait until they're at least 16 or 17. I mean, you don't want to build some, 18-year history with a child that's 19 years old. Like, that's going to be questionable. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily do it until, okay, next year they're going to want to buy a car, and I don't particularly want to be a cosigner on said car. That might be a way to help build a little bit of credit so that they would be able to get a car. Good question. Check your credit reports regularly. Again, looking for anything that might be incorrect. Generally, if you correct the information once, then it's just going to be looking out for, is there any new activity that's not mine on your credit report. Also, be sure to check credit reports for deceased family members and letting the credit bureaus know that they're deceased. Although you're not held accountable for that deceased family member's debt, it can help watch out for those scammers. And anytime you have identity theft, report it to the FTC because they're going to be watching out for that and cracking down on that, ideally getting all that stuff out of there. So how do they steal your credit report or your credit information? There's a lot of different ways. So they can steal from companies. I'm sure you've all heard of Target's problems. Phishing. There can be phishing emails, phishing phone calls, all sorts of different scams that people call you and they might say, I'm with such and such medical care or something or other, and I just needed to verify some information with you. What's your social security number? They called you. Probably not a good idea to give them your social security number. Another tactic is if you think that they might actually be who they say they are, tell them you'll call them back and then call the number on whatever documentation you have at home. So beware. I've also unfortunately heard of people who said, well, I told them I'd call them back and then they gave me the number to call them at. So be careful. They can be tricky. Dumpster diving, mail theft, those kinds of things. Again, be careful. Shred all of your documents that have identifying information on it, even if it's as simple as the gas receipt when you go pump gas. Well, it's only got the last 4 digits. Well, depending on what other information they might be able to collect, if they're fishing through your dumpster and they get your social security number and they have the last 4 digits of a credit card, you'd be surprised what they can come up with. So being careful, account takeover, track your accounts. This is one reason why I love internet banking. It makes it very easy to check online regularly. Check your credit card if you have one. Check your debit card regularly so that you know, is there anything that's not mine? Old computers. Don't ever throw out an old computer and just throw it away. You want to wipe that information first. Be careful what we're putting on social media, those kinds of things. Again, you'd be shocked at what they can piece together from various sources. So if you are a victim of identity theft, what happens? The Fair Credit Billing Act does protect you. So no matter what, on a credit card, you're only responsible for up to $50, regardless. If you report it before any charges are made, you're not responsible for anything. If you don't report it, you could be held accountable for up to $50. Again, that's not a huge scare. However, I will say that this is the Fair Credit Billing Act. This does not apply to debit cards. So there are different rules and regulations there, and sometimes, depending on the bank, you might be held liable for more. In addition, with credit cards, if the charge is made without the actual card present, so if somebody steals your card number and makes a purchase online or something like that, the card wasn't actually present for a magnetic swipe, you're not held accountable for those charges. So you just dispute it and they would take care of those charges for you. Security freeze, I think we heard that a little bit earlier, can be beneficial, can be a pain, kind of depends on the scenario. So generally, a security freeze is going to cost you $5 to open and $5 to shut it off, but it does freeze your credit. So what that means is if you had a concern of identity theft or you had been the victim of identity theft, this might be a good solution for you to freeze it. No one would be able to take out any credit in your name. You would have to go on and remove the freeze if you needed to use credit. Not use credit, but you needed to open new credit. So, you can use your credit cards and stuff like that even after your report is frozen, but you wouldn't be able to open anything new. And I believe it takes 3 days to remove the freeze. But, generally speaking, you kind of know in advance if you're going to need a new car to go ahead and do that. Yes?
If you've been the victim of identity theft, it's free.
Hold on.
They don't charge you.
Hold on. What?
Anybody that has used a note card,
If we could get note cards to the middle of the room, please. And all of your polling calculators. Okay. What was the question?
no, I was just going to say, if you've been the victim of identity theft and it's validated it, there's no fee to get your security freeze. I've done it.
Very good. Very good. So it was shared up front that if you were actually a victim of identity theft, they will allow you to get a credit freeze for free. So that could be helpful as well. So it's basically designed to prevent additional identity theft problems. So who do you contact? When do you contact them? What do you do? If you think that you might be a victim of identity theft, go ahead and contact any of your financial institutions. So loans, whether that's car, student loan, anybody that you have a trade line with, all of your credit cards, close those accounts or freeze them so that you know that there's not going to be any additional charges. Change passwords on internet banking. If you have internet banking, change PIN numbers. Ask for the accounts to be flagged. That's going to slow that stuff down and be able to give you some time to prepare. If you do have identity theft, most of the time you're going to be required to get a police report in order to dispute that with the credit bureaus. So you're going to need things to go ahead and do that. The 3 credit bureaus can place freezes on each. You're going to want to contact all 3 of them, not just one. You'll go to the police department and get a police report. Contact the FTC at their website, or there's a 1-800 number as well. Like I mentioned earlier, they're cracking down on identity theft, so always notify them of that. And then one more thing I will add in regards to identity theft is while we do want to be careful with our identity, it's kind of like locking your house when you leave, right? So we want to do what we can to secure our identity, but you can still be a victim of identity theft even though you're watching out. So this is kind of one of those know what to do if that were to happen. So I think Lisa had some questions that they'll bring up here. And then did anybody else have any questions they wanted to get answered before we have the cards?
How do you check your minor child's credit history if they don't have a credit history? I've been a victim of identity theft. Some of her information was compromised. They did use mine. I don't know that they've used hers. And I tried to check, and it's really, she's a minor, so they say, well, she doesn't, it's just hard.
Right. So the question was, how do you check a minor's credit report? You can go to annualcreditreport.com. When you go to pull up your information on annualcreditreport.com, they're going to ask you verifying information. I would assume you would know all the information that they're going to ask for. You have to put in your social security number, those kinds of things. But then they're going to ask interesting questions. And if you don't have a good memory, they can be a little tricky. I've done this. But it'll ask you, in 2003, you opened an account with which agency? And it has like A, B, C, or D. And you're like, well, where was I then? And you'll have to think back. But with a child's, hopefully you would know the answers to all of those. And then if you don't, or if you fill out the question incorrectly, it'll actually freeze it. And then the only way is going to actually be to contact them. And then you would have to provide documentation in order, like your social security, proof of identity type of documentation, and then you could get that for her as well. Yeah. What kind of questions did we have? I think there was a raised hand in the back as well earlier. Yes. Very good question. If you have a credit card, but you pay it off every month, does that help your credit? Yes, it does. Paying on it every month shows that you're current. That's actually perfect. That's going to help build your credit. Even if you pay the whole balance. You do not have to carry a balance month to month in order to help build your credit. Yes?
Piggybacking off of that question, do you still want to keep it below that 30% if you're paying it off every month?
Then it would be below the 30%. But yes.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if
Well, you're
$10,000 limit in your credit card, you can rack up $10,000.
you're right. Yes.
But
You would, and the reason for that is because the balance is whenever they report to the credit bureau. So even though you pay it off every month, if they report mid-month and you don't pay it off until the end of the month, and it shows that you've got an outstanding balance of $9,000 on a $10,000 limit card, it's going to show that you're using a lot more of that, even though you're paying it off, because it does not show on your credit report that you paid it to zero every month. Now, it's going to show whatever the balance is on the day that they reported to the credit bureau. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Late payment isn't turned over to collections. Does it go on your credit report? That's a good question. I'm not sure what kind of a late payment we're talking about. If it's like a late medical bill or something of that nature, it doesn't go on your credit report until it goes to collections. And even then, some collection agencies don't report to a credit bureau. So that kind of depends. Like credit cards and those kinds of things are going to report as soon as it's 30 plus days, 60 plus days, 90 plus days. They're going to be reporting every single month. Would student loans affect your credit? Yes, they absolutely will. With student loans, you've got to stay in touch with your lender. They're actually one of the easiest to work with when you have, a situation where you can't pay, but you've got to keep that line of communication open and contacting them. So make sure to make arrangements with them. If it's in deferment, that's not negative on your credit report. But if you don't pay it, it is negative on your credit report. So be sure if you can't afford to pay that you're contacting them. It says, what if you don't use your account for a long time? What would happen to the account? That's an interesting question too. Kind of depends if it's a credit card. Depends on the credit card holder. Some will close the account after a period of non-use. They'll close it for inactivity. Others will stay open for a lot longer. And I think part of that would probably depends on the history of the account. If it's a very old account and you only use it here and there, they're probably more likely to keep it open. Are garnishments on your credit score? Yes, because in order to have a garnishment, there has to be a judgment, and judgments are considered a public record. So, yes, they would be on your credit report as a judgment. We've got a lot of questions. Applying for credit cards, does it lower your credit score? Very good questions. That, again, comes back to the inquiries. So as long as you have few number of inquiries, you're not going to have that affecting your credit score. Now, if you have multiple inquiries in a short period of time, that is going to affect your credit score. That's going to flag you as a potential risk. Why does this person need multiple lines of credit type of thing? So just be careful with how often and how frequently, but infrequently deciding that you want to get a new card, that's not going to change your credit score. Does the number of credit checks affect your score? I think that kind of coincides there. So yeah, checking it, again, a limited number of applications here and there is not going to negatively affect you. If you're applying for a lot, it may.
But pulling my credit report through one of those things doesn't affect it at all. So that annual credit report?
No, that is not going to affect, that's not going to affect your credit. Oh, perfect. No, it does not affect your credit for you to look at your credit. Basically, they're looking for lenders, so people who are checking your credit for the purpose of giving you a loan or a credit card, line of credit, those types of things. Then it's going to be what's called a hard hit. If it's a soft hit, you checking your own credit or coming to a credit counseling agency to have your credit checked, that's not going to be considered an inquiry. Excellent. Moving right along. Are settlements a good thing? How do you know what is 30% of your availability? So basically just knowing what your credit limits are on all of your credit cards, totaling that up, and you should stay under that number. The easiest way to kind of think about it for me, if you have multiple cards, is just to consider whatever that 30% is as your credit limit. So if I have a $1,000 limit on this credit card, in my head, I'm just not going to charge more than $300 on it at any time. $300 is my limit on this card. Okay. Settlements with a collection agency, that kind of depends on the situation. It will show on your credit report most of the time if you do a settlement. They'll list that account was closed via settlement. Depending on your score, if you have a negative score and you have a lot of debt, doing a settlement can benefit you because having zero balance is going to benefit your credit. But if you already have very high credit, which if you have a bunch of debt is probably unlikely, doing settlements can be a quicker way of zeroing out those balances and then moving forward. But for somebody who is in good credit standing to do a debt settlement, that could be considered negative. So it kind of depends on your personal situation. Credit cards, are they the safest way to pay for airline expenses, etc.? Most of the time, airlines and car rentals and things like that require a credit card. So oftentimes it's the only way to pay for those types of things. We already answered the second one.
Okay,
so.
This is my turn to say something. It is a suggestion from one of you, and because these ladies work there, I think it would sound better coming from someone else, but they suggest that a topic is how to dig yourself out of a financial hole. And I want to tell you that's what they do, is they teach people how to get themselves out of some really tight financial holes, or whether it really can't be done and needs to be solved with a bankruptcy. They can give you more details on it, but it is one of the neatest things about their agency.
That's very good. That's actually what we're doing next week. So come back for the budgeting topic. This is one of the things why we're looking at your credit, because when you can pull that, hopefully you would have that and know kind of what's on your credit report when you come back next week. And we can kind of be looking at, okay, we want to be able to work out a budget where we can afford to start making payments on some of this stuff. So yes, that's very good. Yes?
I did fill out a card, but apparently it's not there, so I won't be anonymous. Does it make a difference if your indebtedness is medical as opposed to credit cards? Or how it looks on that?
There's been some question about that topic here recently, and they've been changing some of the rules and regulations. Do you know what all those answers are?
I don't know all of them, but
right.
They're not supposed to weight medical debt as much as collections and other things that are on your report. That just changes.
Yeah.
It's like 09.
They're just now making changes on that. So
So you might see some changes in your credit score if that's something that's been affecting you lately.
very good. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
That one that you said insurance companies and employers can check your credit.
Mm-hmm.
Can they do that without your knowledge? Are they allowed to make inquiries? Like you apply for a credit card.
Well, I think with insurance, I think when you sign up for the policy, there's in the fine print, I think there is an approval for them to do that. I think they do it annually. With an employer, no. They would have to have written consent that they could pull your credit report. And if that were to happen and you knew that you had some negative stuff on your credit, that would be a prime time to explain, like, look, I had a situation. I'm working on repairing it now. that was 2 years ago, and you can see that since then everything's been great. That would be a prime time to explain, instead of just being like, okay, crap, now they're going to see this, what do I do next? Explaining and giving the reasoning there. Yes?
When the insurance company makes an inquiry, is that a hard check like you said, or a soft check?
I believe it's a soft check because I haven't seen that, but I know they do pull scores. So I'm going to let Elisa take over for a minute and kind of give our kind of wrap up. And then if there's additional questions, you guys can certainly feel free and ask as many questions as you want.
Thank you so much, Shana. Isn't she a wonderful speaker? Can we please give her thank you? Just a few things before we wrap up tonight. On page 12, it discusses free help with budgeting and credit counseling from HCCI. Please take advantage of that. We're, like Shana said, we're here to help, so we more than definitely will want to help you with that. Our next class is on Thursday, October 1st, and Shana will be back, and she'll be discussing budgeting. It's talking about spending and savings plans. Doors will open at 6:50 again. So more than likely, if you come here a little bit early, they're going to tell you to walk around a little bit. So just so you realize that. And then on one final note, we do have one Wednesday class. All of them are going to be on Thursday except for the October 7th class. So if you want to make note of that. And we'll also have our money talk, our very first money talk at 6 o'clock that night as well. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope I see similar faces again next week and the turnout. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming out.